My name is Aiden, I'm 32, and I was always seen by my family as the one who'd just go along with whatever came my way. The soft-spoken one, the compliant one, the guy who never stirred the pot. Maybe I was like that once. But when my grandparents passed away and left their entire estate to me, the house, the savings and stocks worth just shy of $900,000, something in me changed. I started observing. I listened more intently. Most importantly, I began preparing. I knew exactly what kind of people I was dealing with. My brother, Tyler, 3 years my junior, is all flash, boisterous, charming. The kind of person who can sweet-talk you into lending him $5,000 for a can't-miss venture. He'd gotten away with plenty over the years. Credit cards opened in Mom's name, a borrowed car that somehow disappeared. And every time Mom bailated him out saying he was just finding his way. Me, I was always the dependable one, the fallback, the safety net. I was tired of that role. When Grandpa passed 2 years ago, a year after Grandma, he left everything to me. It wasn't a shock. I'd been their caregiver when no one else could be bothered to check in. I drove them to doctor's visits, picked up their groceries, sorted through endless paperwork. Tyler, he'd breeze in on Christmas, snap a few photos for social media, and vanish until the next holiday. But when the will was read and my name stood alone, I caught Mom's expression. A tight, disapproving grimace like I'd stolen something that wasn't mine. That's when I knew trouble was brewing. The house was the centerpiece. A stunning old Victorian with rich red brick, soaring windows, and ivy winding up its walls like a scene from a novel. It was a historic gem, handed down through 3 generations, meticulously maintained by my grandparents. The neighborhood had skyrocketed in value over the past decade, with every nearby home gutted and flipped. My grandparents never sold. Now it was mine. I didn't move in right away. I stayed in my apartment across town and quietly got everything in order. I had the house appraised, consulted an estate lawyer, and set up a trust, not just for the house, but for all the assets, including the savings. I kept it secret. I didn't tell Tyler. I didn't tell Mom. I told no one. I secured the original deed in a safe place and transferred the property title, assets, and savings into an irrevocable trust, with myself as trustee. I even switched the utilities to a business name linked to the trust. It cost extra, but I didn't care. I knew my family too well. I knew they'd try something. For a while, things were calm, too calm. Tyler sent a few texts, asking if he could borrow the backyard for a pool party. There's no pool. Mom dropped hints about how unfair it was for one person to inherit everything. She even said, "You know your brother was always Grandpa's favorite." As if that meant anything. I just nodded and steered the conversation elsewhere. I didn't argue. I didn't correct them. I let them think I was clueless, that I hadn't taken precautions. The real trouble started last month. Tyler began posting cryptic social media updates. Big moves coming, new chapter unfolding, that sort of thing. Then one Saturday, I was at the house trimming the hedges, keeping the yard tidy, when Mom's car rolled into the driveway. Tyler jumped out first, all smiles and sunglasses, like he was stepping onto a red carpet. Mom followed, clutching a clipboard and beaming like she was about to unveil a new project. "Hey, man," Tyler said, slapping my shoulder. "We've got some news." I raised an eyebrow. "We?" Mom stepped closer. "We consulted a lawyer. Turns out the house should have been split between you two. Grandpa messed up by not updating the will after Grandma passed, but don't worry, we fixed it." I stared at her. "Fixed what exactly?" Tyler waved a folded paper from his pocket. "We got the house title transferred to me. It's done. You'll need to clear out by Friday, but no hard feelings, right? We'll give you time to pack." I looked at them, one then the other, taking in their smug expressions the sheer nerve. My pulse didn't spike. I wasn't rattled. Honestly, I almost chuckled because they genuinely thought I was that naive. I gave them a small, polite smile, the kind that unsettles people. "You really think I'd let that happen?" Tyler laughed like I'd cracked a joke. "It's already done, bro. You've been daydreaming too long." Mom softened her voice as if that would sway me. "We're not being harsh, Aiden. It's just logical. Tyler can handle the property, maybe sell it for a profit. You've got your own place. This way, everyone benefits." I didn't argue. I just nodded slowly and said, "Got it." 2 days later, they returned with a moving truck and 2 hired movers. I was ready. They pulled into the driveway, acting like they owned the place, laughing and barking orders. Tyler sat in the passenger seat, sipping coffee, while Mom directed the movers toward the front door. Then they saw me on the porch, arms crossed, standing next to a tall man in a crisp navy suit. He held a thick folder and wore a badge on his belt. The folder had the trust's name on it, a name they didn't recognize. The badge was real. The suit was real. And the man, he was from the county property records office. They stopped dead. Tyler stepped out confused. "What's this about?" I stayed silent. The man, Mr. Levin, cleared his throat with the calm authority of someone who'd handled too many scenes like this to be fazed. He glanced at a paper in his hand before speaking firmly but evenly. "Are you Tyler Green?" he asked. Tyler frowned, caught off guard. "Yeah, who's asking?" "I'm with the county property records office," Mr. Levin said. "I'm here on behalf of the legal trustee of the East Thornhill estate, this property." He gestured to the house behind him. "I have documents proving the deed has been held in a trust since April last year, managed by Aidan Green. Any claims to ownership since then, including a fraudulent title transfer, are invalid and potentially criminal." Tyler's face paled. "Fraudulent?" he mumbled, glancing at Mom. "What's he talking about?" Mom stepped forward, her lips tight. "There's been a mistake. We reviewed the old deed. It was still in Grandpa's name. We thought—" "You thought wrong," I cut in, breaking my silence. "I never left the property in my name directly. It's in a trust. That's why you couldn't find it in public records. You tried to fake a transfer with an outdated document through some shady title service." Mr. Levin nodded. "I filed a fraud report on the attempted title claim. Typically, we'd issue a warning first, but given the circumstances, showing up with movers threatening to evict the legal trustee, we're moving straight to enforcement." Tyler blinked. "Enforcement?" I turned to him, my voice steady. "It means if you step foot in this house without my permission, you're trespassing, and if you mess with the trust or its assets, you're facing charges. Several." For a moment, no one spoke. The movers stood halfway between the truck and the porch, exchanging awkward glances, clearly regretting taking the job. One of them coughed and started backing toward the van. Tyler found his voice. "You're really doing this to family?" My tone stayed calm, almost too calm. "Family? You showed up with a forged title and a moving crew to take my home. The one thing Grandpa and Grandma wanted me to have. Don't lecture me about family." Mom's jaw tightened. "They were confused, Aidan. They didn't understand." "No," I snapped, cutting her off. "You didn't understand. You thought I was still the pushover I was at 20. The kid you could guilt into cleaning up Tyler's messes or lending money just this once. But I'm not that kid anymore. I learned, I watched, and I prepared." Mr. Levin flipped through his folder. "For clarity, we've notified the local police. If either of you return with any property claim, there's a file ready, civil and criminal." Tyler's eyes flashed, but he stayed quiet. He turned to the movers and barked, "We're out." "Let's go." He didn't look at me again. Mom hesitated for a moment, her mouth half open like she wanted to say something, maybe one last attempt to manipulate, but nothing came out. She followed him silently. The truck pulled out, and I watched its taillights fade down the hill. The silence that followed was heavy, the kind that settles after years of bottled-up tension finally break. Mr. Levin handed me a copy of the fraud report and said, "Call if they try anything." I thanked him, and after he left, I stood on the porch, letting the quiet sink in. But it wasn't over. 3 days later, a letter arrived, formal, typed, and signed by a new lawyer hired by my mother. She claimed emotional distress, arguing that as a direct descendant, she had a moral and familial right to part of the estate. She demanded compensation for the pain of being excluded, listing reasonable reparations, $150,000, co-ownership of the house, and a monthly stipend until further notice. I stared at the letter, stunned at first. Then my hands shook, not from fear but from rage. She wasn't done. And neither was I. I must have read that letter half a dozen times before setting it down. The first few reads, I tried to convince myself she didn't mean it the way it sounded. By the 6th, I couldn't deny it. My own mother had put her name on legal letterhead and tried to charge me for not letting her and Tyler take what was rightfully mine. It wasn't even the money that stung. It was the entitlement. The audacity to call it a misunderstanding one day and demand $150,000 the next, like we were strangers in a lawsuit. The phrase that burned in my mind was familial obligation, as if I owed her everything and she owed me nothing. I didn't reply right away. I knew better than to act on emotion. I called Mr. Levin, who connected me with a sharp estate attorney, Sonia Cruz. She was in her early 40s, calm but laser-focused, the kind of person who didn't bluff because she didn't need to. I handed her everything. The trust documents, Mom's lawyer's letter, even screenshots of Tyler's cryptic social media posts. Within 24 hours, Sonia filed a cease and desist against both of them, making it clear the trust was untouchable and they had no legal ground. But Sonia went further. She dug into the forged title transfer and found Tyler had faked multiple signatures, even using a counterfeit notary stamp filed through a shady out-of-state registry to dodge local records. She tipped off a fraud investigator at the county DA's office, who was already probing that registry for other scams. Tyler had just made himself an easy target. I still hadn't told them I knew. If they wanted to keep pushing, I'd let them dig deeper. And they did. 2 weeks after the cease and desist, another letter arrived, this one from Mom, less formal, dripping with her voice. It was full of guilt trips. After everything I've done for you, you were always the quiet one. I raised you better than this. It ended with, you can stop this now by doing what's right. Families shouldn't need lawyers when love and understanding can fix things. I didn't respond. Sonia advised against it. I forwarded the letter to her, and she added it to our growing file, ready for a restraining order if needed. Then came the next surprise. One morning, I found a folded flyer tucked into my mailbox's handle, no address, just shoved in like a prank. I knew Tyler's handwriting instantly. It read, "Hope you're enjoying your throne. Remember who's got your back when the cash runs out." I laughed, a quiet, exhausted laugh, the kind you let out when someone proves they'll never change. I scanned the note and added it to the file. But I also decided something. I was done just defending myself. It was time to push back. Tyler was already under scrutiny for real estate fraud. Sonia pointed out that proving harassment or malicious intent could escalate things. And while the courts would handle the criminal side, there was another way to hit Tyler where it hurt. His reputation, his credit, his career. He'd recently landed a job at a trendy real estate firm, the kind that cared more about its social media aesthetic than its ethics. I did some research and learned they boasted about integrity and transparent transactions. Would they stand by an employee who tried to steal a house with forged documents? I didn't act rashly. I waited. Then something unexpected happened. My cousin Megan, who I hadn't spoken to in years, messaged me on Facebook. "Hey, can we talk? Your mom's been telling family some stuff. Thought you should know." We met for coffee the next day. Megan was always blunt, and that hadn't changed. She showed me texts, voicemails, even a group chat with 2 other cousins. Mom had been spreading a story that I'd manipulated Grandpa in his final years, coercing him to rewrite the will while he was frail. She even suggested I'd taken advantage of him. Emotionally, legally, maybe worse. I felt nauseous. That's when I realized this wasn't about the house, the money, or even Tyler. It was about control. Mom couldn't stand that I'd said no, that I'd protected something from her reach. Now she was trying to ruin my name to force me to give in. Megan looked at me over her coffee and said, "I don't buy it, neither do Jamie or Chris, but she's not stopping. She's calling everyone." I nodded, my heart pounding harder than I wanted. "Thanks for the heads up." I didn't sleep much that night. I realized if she was willing to lie to the entire family, to shred my character just to pressure me, I had to be ready to end this, not just for me, but to ensure she and Tyler couldn't do this to anyone else. What I did next wasn't just about lawyers. I spent the next 2 days in my study, strategizing. The trust was legally secure, but Mom's smear campaign was poisoning the family. Megan's warning had come just in time, but the damage was spreading. I started getting vague texts from distant relatives. "Just checking in," or "heard some things, hope it's not true." Mom was building a trap, pressure from family, guilt from all sides, until I'd caved to keep the peace. I saw it coming. I wasn't falling for it, so I set my own. Sonia helped me draft a legal declaration, a clear statement backed by every piece of evidence we had. The forged title attempt, the fake notary stamp, the letters, the attempted property grab, and the smear campaign. I included screenshots of Megan's texts, Mom's voicemails calling me a manipulator, and the lawyer's $150,000 demand. But I didn't just file it with the court. I sent a concise, readable version to every relative Mom had contacted. I attached a brief note. "Hi, there's been some talk lately. Before you form opinions, here are the facts with documents. I won't discuss this again. Believe me or don't, that's your call, but at least you'll have the truth." I sent it to 27 people. The response was immediate. Within hours, 5 relatives I hadn't spoken to in years replied. Most were sorry, some were appalled. My Aunt Robin, who used to fawn over Tyler, called me that night, crying. She'd believed Mom's story until she saw the forgery, the letter, the evidence. "I didn't know, Aiden. I'm so sorry," she said. I didn't want apologies. I just told her I hoped she saw why I'd acted. Not everyone came around. 3 relatives on Mom's side doubled down, accusing me of spinning the story or faking the documents. I knew I couldn't convince everyone. But for every doubter, 5 others reached out, saying, "Thank you for the truth." Then came the move I'd been waiting for. I contacted Tyler's boss anonymously at first through their ethics hotline. I sent a detailed PDF report, organized, labeled with proof of the fraudulent title attempt, the forged documents, and the potential crime committed under their brand. I thought it might take a week. It took 2 days. Tyler's name vanished from the company website by week's end. A college friend in the local real estate association told me the firm launched an audit the moment they got my tip. They found other issues in Tyler's files. He wasn't just fired, he was reported to the state board and his license was suspended pending investigation. He tried calling me the day it happened, 11 missed calls. I didn't pick up. That weekend, he posted on Instagram, a black screen with the words, "Some people ruin your life and play the victim." He didn't name me, but he didn't need to. The people who mattered already knew the truth, but it wasn't over. 2 days later, I received a county notice. A warrant was issued for Tyler. The forged title attempt had triggered charges for attempted property fraud and filing false documents with a government agency. I stared at the notice, numb. This wasn't what I'd wanted. I didn't want to destroy him. But he'd forced my hand, and now there were consequences. He was arraigned quietly, no fanfare, just a court date, a lawyer he couldn't afford, and a future of legal trouble. He likely wouldn't serve time, maybe probation, fines, community service, but the record would stick. Jobs would be tougher to land, trust harder to regain. The next time he tried to pitch himself as a real estate hotshot, this would haunt him. As for Mom, she went silent after the evidence went out. No calls, no apologies, no more demands. But 2 months later, I got a letter from her lawyer, a carefully worded note withdrawing all legal claims on the estate and respectfully requesting no further contact. She'd given up, she knew she'd lost. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel proud. I felt free. That night I walked through the Victorian barefoot on the hardwood, the air carrying the faint scent of cedar and old books. The house was still peaceful, mine. I stood in the den where Grandpa used to sit in his leather chair reading the paper and whispered, "I kept it safe like I promised." I think he'd have been proud. In the end, I didn't just keep the house. I kept my self-respect, my future. Tyler lost his career, Mom lost her story, and I gained something they never saw coming.